I'm extremely concerned about some of the seriousness of some of the stories we're talking about today. Some of these can weigh on me pretty good, and they should weigh on you too, because this is the world that we're living in. This is happening all across America. This is happening all across the world. And ultimately what we're seeing is all these things that we've done wrong for so long is finally coming to fruition. Let's talk about some crazy stories today. We're going to talk about Ron Paul and some of the warnings that he has that I thought were huge. We're also going to talk about what China is doing. That again, what did we talk about with the fact of an inept administration? What's actually happening? Not only that, I thought the economy was doing better. Well, there's 3 or 4 major stores and retail giants that are closing the doors. And guess what? That affects your food, your medicine, your automotive, your independence. We're going to talk about all that today. Then we have a few more stories. I want you to be aware that these are heavy stories today because I want you to understand that we've got to wake up and we cannot play games anymore. If we want to save America, we must get away from this administration. And that means Kamala too. Let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Thank you so very much for being here today. If you are new to the channel, please go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up. It helps us move our channel across this platform, and we want to share the word so that way hopefully we can gain wisdom and a common sense knowledge to do better and try to seek guidance as we go through this crazy world. So now let's dive into these stories. And again, I told you some of these are just crazy. The first story I want to talk about is some of the closing of businesses. You hear Kamala and you hear Biden talking about how great the economy is in this administration. Let's really see how great it is. Now, you know it's not because you're the one still paying for goods on Main Street. I want you to listen to this. Walgreens to close 1,200 stores as new CEO attempts to turn around. It says that what we've seen is we're going to have to go through a sluggish customer spending because people do not have the money, and that the fact that we don't have good reimbursements from the government with our drugs that we're selling, pharmaceuticals. Walgreens says we've got to start cost-cutting measures. So what they're saying is we're losing money, we're not getting paid for our prescriptions because everybody's using us as their drugstore, but we're not actually getting good reimbursements from the companies, insurances, and also the fact of government. And then also nobody's buying anything because they don't have the money. The economy sucks. Now you think that's just the only one. I'm gonna give you 2 more. More than 400 North American 7-Elevens are closing. Now 7-Elevens are just convenience stores, but listen to what they said. They said a convenience stores chain 7-Eleven will close hundreds of stores as the company faces decline in the U.S. store sales. 7-Eleven operates more than 13,000 stores across the United States and Canada. The company plans to shut down 444 underperforming stores because they want to improve the cost and the efficiency. On October 10th, they gave a financial forecast to their firm, and it shows they are underwater and people are not utilizing and spending money with them. Again, a failed economy. Now let's go to another one. Goldman issues a grim outlook for AutoZone, citing significant exposure to, listen to this, quote unquote, to struggling working poor consumers. People want to fix up their cars. Guess who fixes up their cars? It's either people that are independent, but it's also people who need to save $1 that can't afford to go and take it to an automotive place. So they go and they try to fix it themselves. Well, that's what AutoZone and these places are. It allows people to buy the parts themselves and try to put it on, follow a YouTube video. But what is happening is people are saying, well, they cannot spend the money to fix their automobiles. So we're seeing the fact that they're struggling. And they said in 2025, AutoZone will probably have a grim outlook, and it could shutter stores because people do not have money to spend. Now that's 3 major retailers that I just told you that simply does not have the money. They don't have the money. You know why they don't have the money? Because they're consumer-driven businesses. That means consumers don't have the money. But again, your politicians will tell you this economy's gotten better, that inflation's down. Well, breaking news, it hasn't. And this shows because these are the stores. Think about this now. Walgreens is shuttering that many thousands of stores. Okay, so if they're shuttering those stores, how many of those is the pharmacy that you use? Think about it. What about AutoZone struggling? How many times have you went in to buy parts and you needed to buy the parts because you needed to save money and not pay $90 to $150 an hour for an automotive mechanic to look at it because you think you could simply fix it because you want to save money. What about the 7-Elevens? Now, convenience store foods and most of this stuff is junk anyway, but when you're on the roads or you need something quick, the whole point of convenience stores were to be convenient, to help you grab something and go. Well, if no one's spending money there and they start shuttering, then that again leaves you to a point where that's neighborhood little markets where you can't get goods anymore, so now you're driving further to get the goods. This is a full representation of what the Biden and Harris administration is. Now, I'm going to blow your mind with this next story because this is one of those ones that's just heavy too. Spy drones swarmed Langley Air Force Base. Pentagon unable to counter threat. So now we have some unidentified flying object from another country that is getting intel from us in our Air Force Base. Not only do we not have permission to shoot them down, it says that we have had laws passed that allows us not to be able to shoot down things like this. That's why we didn't shoot down the spy balloons, if you remember. But it also says that the Pentagon was not even able to counter the threat. They were not even able to pick them up or block them. So who got the intel? Are we worried about this? This is a big story that nobody's talking about. This was covered on Zero Hedge. It says since the start of the 21st century, America's defense spending has soared nearly 50%, with this year's budget surpassing $841 billion. Yet, despite the world's largest military spender, the Pentagon alarmingly struggles to protect the homeland and could not even protect from drones looking over in the U.S. border. A new Wall Street Journal reports that the fleet of spy drones swarmed some of America's most sensitive national security, including Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. Now remember, Langley is also the place of CIA. Langley is also where we have a lot of our data centers. You think it's right that we have spy drones swarming? Now we're not talking about just one or two. They said a lot. Now they didn't tell how many, but they said it was numerous, swarmed, meaning they were all over this area. And the Pentagon spends all this money to go across the seas, but they can't do jack crap to help guard our security right here back at home. Again, another sign of a weak leader. It says for several nights, military personnel had reported a mysterious breach of restricted airspace over the stretch of land that has now been the largest concentration of national security facilities in the U.S. It shows that in 45 minutes to an hour after sunset, this was happening. U.S. Air Force General Mark Kelly told the Journal that he was stumped by the reports of spy drones over Langley. The Journal said that drones flew around the base over highly sensitive military installations in the regions at night for a little more than 2 weeks. 2 flippin' weeks we allow our government to allow spy drones from other countries to fly over our military assets. And we're worried about sending troops and THAAD missiles over the Middle East. We're worried about sending artillery to Ukraine. And we can't even guard our own safety. This weighs hard on me, and I'm extremely concerned about this because there's one of two things happening. Either someone knew and allowed it to happen, which is treasonous, or our government is so inept and so incompetent, they allowed it to happen. It's so pathetic. This reminds me of the Trump attempt. I said the same thing. Either we have someone who is leaking and doing things he shouldn't be doing and trying to cause harm, or you have government who is so inept they allowed it to happen. Either way, it looks bad on us. Why do we think this government knows what they're doing? That's what blows my mind. All they know how to do is persecute people and prosecute people and not actually fulfill what their obligations and duties are to the American people. Kelly said these drones were roughly 20 foot long, flew more than 100 miles per hour at a 3,000 to 4,000 feet altitude. None of these drones were shot down because federal law prohibits the military from dispatching these. You know who started that? Biden. Biden started this law where they couldn't shoot it down because of aerial snooping. But guess what? He says, unless these unmanned systems, these are considered imminent threat. Shortly after the spy drones first appeared across the Chesapeake Bay, Biden was briefed and said it was a national security threat. Officials from the Defense Department and Federal Bureau of Investigations and the Pentagon's UFO office consulted outside experts under the gravity of the situation. However, nothing was done about it. I'll bring up another story, and this reminds me again of something that just should scare Americans going back to Department of Defense and a directive. Ron Paul warns, and this is something he said some time ago, but it's now starting to come to fruition because people are starting to wake up and see that what he said was reissued in September of 24. So listen to this. Ron Paul warns that the U.S. military was just authorized to harm or kill Americans on U.S. soil. Daniel McAdams, it's not law, he says. It's Department of Defense directive. So this is an administrative state where they can take over and they do not have to pass the law. They just form a directive. It's a DoD directive that was reissued on September of 27, 2024. It governs the Department of Defense intelligence activities and now includes provisions authorizing lethal force in certain circumstances. And this also supplants and updates the 2016 version. This is the one that Ron Paul warned about, but guess what? It did not have this mentioned in it about lethal force on Americans. The DoD directive, just so if you want to look it up, it's called 5240.01 for those who wants to read for themselves. That's what this guy shared, that what Ron Paul was talking about. So now we have our own military that cannot take over and hurt imminent threats from other foreign countries. Let drones fly around everywhere. Spy balloons fly around everywhere. Send our troops over everywhere. But now they're even authorized to take lethal force on us in certain circumstances. Well, who deems those certain circumstances? Well, probably the ones who set the bill. Probably the big government. So if you're in opposition of the government, are you considered in a certain circumstance? Does this not blow your mind, people? So again, now we've talked about the economy is to shambles. Businesses are struggling. We have, unmanned drones swarming around our national security that our government can't shoot down, and they can't even catch them to counter the threat in the first place. And now we see that there's a new directive or an updated directive that could lean government against us in a lethal force fashion. It's not over, people. Let's keep on going. I want you to go back and watch what Kamala said about Columbus Day. Of course, she don't call it Columbus Day, but it's part of a shameful past and ushered a wave of devastation, perpetuating violence, stealing land, and spreading disease. That was a real clip that she used. America was found and conquered and taken. And to be honest with you, America wouldn't be what it is without the history that we've had. You can run from it all you want. But when we have leaders that condemn things like Columbus Day, what she's doing is she is dividing. She is dividing our country. You know what she just came out with? Let's go on from this. She also she wants to start a new initiative where she will forgive loans for African Americans only. She wants to give entrepreneurs the chance to make it, but she's not going to do it for whites, Asians, Latinos, for nobody else, just blacks. You don't believe that's counterintuitive? You don't believe that's polarizing? This is the leadership that the Democrats put up. This is the leadership that they're saying should and win elections. And all she's actually doing is polarizing us to hate each other. Again, all the while, as we talked before, China is now on the move. And again, the infighting is still happening. Our government is falling to pieces and they're weak. And guess what happens this week? China initiates a huge military drill around Taiwan and warnings to the island's president. It says on Monday, China has launched a large military drill encircling the self-governing island of Taiwan, which Taipei has blasted for unreasonable provocation. China's PLA military deployed warships and fighters in a stern warning against the separatist Taiwan. This is a complete and utter blockade, is what Taiwan is saying. They surrounded the whole island. Now, why do you think they're doing that? Why do you think North Korea is putting all the artillery on the line with South Korea? Why do you think Russia's pushing back so much and Ukraine's acting scared now? Because weak leadership has a consequence. And now we're starting to see what that is. It's unbelievable, people. And if we don't pay attention, this is what's going to happen. This is heavy news, but this is what is actually real news. On top of that, you want a leader who is fake. You got one if you go with Kamala. Came out, Chris Rufo shared that the book that she wrote a few years back, completely plagiarized. Completely plagiarized. Follow Chris Rufo on X. Go back and read what he said. He took snippets and he came with receipts. Completely plagiarized. Waltz, he's in tons of allegations himself. Is this what we want leading our country and believing we're going to have freedom and liberty in America? This is only going to get worse if we elect these people. I feel like I beat a dead horse every day when I tell you all these things, but I just keep bringing story after story because I want people to realize how dangerous this administration is. Just listen to these stories. Go read them. Every one of these can be found either on X through independent journalists. You can look on, you can just type it in the search engine and you're going to pull up multiple sources. Not only that, Zero Hedge is a great source where you can find a lot of this. Breitbart, Daily Caller. They're not hiding these stories. You know why Kamala's trying to do all these interviews now and all these long-form podcasts, even though they're horrible if you watch them? She's trying to get the attention off all this other stuff. And she's trying to, and she's got money out the yin yang. So what she's doing is she's sending all her handlers out. She's sending everybody out to actually help her. And what she's actually doing is trying to blind you Americans to say that it's all going to be okay. We're actually going to bring back peace. She is in the administration and she's using all these Hollywood elites to tell you that she's going to make it better when she's been in this administration. It's unbelievable. It's time to stand up and wake up and realize this is happening. I know these are heavy stories today, but they're all truth. And if we don't get these stories out, then we're going to be in a heap of trouble because there's a lot of seriousness in these stories. And if we just put our head in the sand and think that Trump's bad and all of a sudden Kamala's going to fix it all, we are sadly mistaken. Guys, let me know your thoughts on these stories.